With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
James E. Pepper Barrel Proof Decanter Bourbon, distilled at the historic Pepper Distillery, DSP KY5 in Lexington, Kentucky. This new release, bottled in a striking recreated distillery decanter from the 1940s, has garnered high praise and accolades. Coming in at number 27 on Fred Minnick's Top 100 Whiskeys of 2023, it received a 94-point rating and was called absolutely delicious with notes of delicate hazelnut and toffee. Astor Wines, one of New York's most prestigious retailers, writes, "The whiskeys coming of age now are some of the finest from any American whiskey producer. This bourbon is arguably the most impressive you will find at this age. Available nationwide with a suggested retail price of $65. Learn more at jamesepepper.com.
Limestone Farms bourbons defy the typical that high proof means less depth and smoothness. Great crafting and blending of our rare and exotic mash bills are here to change the bourbon world. From the first sip, we invite you to discover our bourbons that are deep in Kentucky tradition and richly one of a kind. Limestone Farms, dedicated to excellence.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and we are here live on location today. We are at the Marriott Griffin Gate here in Lexington, Kentucky. We're in front of a live studio audience, so this is a lot of fun for us. We are at the BourbonCon Festival here at the Marriott. This is their second year of doing this performance, or this event.
This performance.
So we're excited to be here.
The piano recital.
It's a piano recital, but we do have a live audience with us today, so we're excited. And of course, I do have my good friend Matt here at the end of the table with me. Matt, how you doing today?
Oh, Mark, I'm good. I got the heat on in here, so I'm doing great.
Yeah, because it was, 1 degree or something, 2 degrees outside, I think, like minus 11 wind chill. So
I think I opened up my freezer this morning to warm
up.
Yeah,
no doubt. Well, we're looking forward to having a great show. We do want to thank all of our sponsors. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast. We're presented by Liquor Barn. They are our presenting sponsor, so we appreciate them. We appreciate all of our sponsors, everything they do for us. We couldn't do the show without their help and support. So we appreciate them as well. Matt, with that said, you want to tell everybody who we have with us here live at BourbonCon today?
Absolutely. Live today for the episode was the star of episode number 53, which was back in 2021.
Not long ago.
Too long ago.
It has been too long ago.
I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah, but Conor O'Driscoll, the Master Distiller at Heaven Hill.
It's great to be back. Thank you guys.
Welcome
Good to see you.
back.
Yeah,
thanks
it
for doing this.
It's been too long. And thanks for sitting down and doing this with us.
Sure. Happy to be here.
Yeah, you guys have a lot going on, and we're going to get into that a little bit later.
We do. We're busy.
That'll be a lot of fun to talk about everything that's going on with Heaven Hill right now. Before we jump into the conversation, though, let's talk about what we've got poured up on this first round, and we're going to start with the 7-year-old, the Heaven Hill bottled in bond. So, Conor, this is your product. So, if you want to, I'll just let you kind of tell everybody what it is we're drinking and a little bit about the bourbon.
Sure. Well, this is actually one of our newer expressions. I think we brought it out in 2019 or 2020, and it promptly won, I think, Whiskey Advocate's number 4 Whiskey of the Year, and it's been winning awards ever since. When people ask me what's my favorite product in our portfolio, I nearly always say Pikesville Rye, but if they phrase it slightly differently, I'll tell them this is the one I'm most proud of. And one of the reasons I'm most proud of it is it's got the Heaven Hill name just emblazoned across the front. Yeah. It's basically this package, this whiskey speaks to who Heaven Hill is, what we do, what we've been doing for 88 years now. And the bottle looks great. There's a ton of good stuff on the label, bottle and bond. This bourbon is 7 years old. It's reasonably priced, but more importantly than that, what's in the bottle is fantastic.
Yeah, and this is a 7-year-old. It was a 6-year-old for a while.
Well, we have had Different bottles and bond.
Okay.
Heaven Hill has had, it basically started with bottle and bond. Bottle and bond bourbons and whiskeys are just part of our DNA. It's what we've, quote, always done. And we've brought some to market, we've taken some off the shelf, and we've brought others out. So this one, like I said, came out with great fanfare, and it was supposed to be, actually the first year it came out was in 7 states. Kentucky was not one of those.
Yeah.
And I remember I
crazy.
asked the brand team, like, how did we come up with that? And they had this very complicated algorithm as to how they do it. And then it was going to be this slow spread across the country, and then it just took off. And last year they said, pedal to the floor, it's going nationwide, the split. So,
and this one, it's originally it was kind of hard to find. I've seen it out a lot more lately, and actually, like even at Costco, picked it up at Costco, picked it up at Liquor Barn, and they actually do have this bottle I saw yesterday. This particular bottle is available here on site, I believe. It was yesterday, unless they've sold out. So that one should be here, and it has been difficult to find in the past. But I like the fact that it's rolled out, and so now it seems to be more readily available.
And that was, like I said, there was a plan to kind of slowly, deliberately bring it out and let it grow organically. Well, it grew very organically, and now we're like, all right, the demand is there. Let's put it out everywhere.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not know, bottled and bond just means it's 100 proof. There are other requirements. It has to be aged at least 4 years, made in the same distilling season, by the same master distiller at the same distillery, but it has to be 100 proof. So that is 100 proof whiskey. The mash bill on this one, Connor, some brands are protective and don't want to share.
We talk about it. So we're going to get into how the Heaven Hill Distillery runs. But one of the things we'll talk about is we make essentially 5 different mash bills. We don't, at the Bernheim Distillery in Louisville, we don't make brands per se, we make styles of whiskey. And 90% of what we make is what we call HH Reg, Heaven Hill Regular. 78% corn, 10% rye, 12% malted barley. A very traditional bourbon mash bill. And then depending on how we age it, where we age it, all that stuff, it becomes a different brand. So we're going to taste the Heaven Hill 7-year-old, and at the end we're going to have the Elijah Craig barrel proof. Same mash bill, very different proof points, batch sizes, ages, all the rest. I mean, you'll see then how the same distillate can become different brands.
Yeah, great. So let's talk about the whiskey. Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the nose on this Heaven Hill bottled and bond? Because the 6-year-old is one of, when there was the 6-year-old, that was one of your favorite bourbons.
The 6-year-old, is definitely one I hold near and dear to my heart. And this has a different nose for the extra year. More mature. I'm picking up more cherry, more dark fruits on it, more like orchard fruit as well. I always thought the 6-year was a little bit more nutty, a little more peanut, a little more nut forward, a little more oak that way. But this is a little fruitier, a little richer, I think, on the nose.
Yeah,
It's
I agree,
really nice.
Matt. I mean, almost like that brown sugary with that cherry aroma as well.
Yeah,
just a richer nose than what the 6-year-old had on it, but just very enjoyable. And 100 proof. It's not too much. It doesn't blow you out. It doesn't really hurt your nose like some of these higher proofs.
Yeah,
but it shouldn't. I mean,
so it's an easy.
The whole burn shouldn't be there. I mean, and it's a sign. To me, it's a sign of a good whiskey that the higher proofs drinks smoothly, drinks rich. You can pick up all those. Just the balance of flavors. No one note is blasting you.
Yeah. So Connor, what about you? This is one of your favorites. So what do you pick up in terms of the nose? What do you get in those?
One of the I'll do tastings and barrel picks and that, and we start talking about what you're picking up, and people get the deer in the headlights look. Like, what if I can't pick out the cherry? What if I can't pick out the marzipan? And so my first rule is, are you enjoying what you're drinking? And then realistically, there is no second rule. Now, if you can pick out the cherries and the peanuts and all that, that's great. And it's fun to learn to do that. And, spoiler alert, I've had to learn to do that. But, so what I get on this one, just the traditional bourbon notes, are there, the caramels, the vanillas, the brown sugar that you got. And then when you taste it,
we'll do the tasting notes in a few minutes. We'll come back to that. We always save that for a little bit later.
But I mean, in one word, delicious. I mean, it's smooth, it's sweet, it's complex. There's fruit notes. There's a little bit of the oak influence. If you use your magic right on the finish there's that little bit of char. So all the components are there, but nothing is overpowering.
Right.
Nothing is like, hey, I'm here, screw those guys.
Yeah,
You know?
it's well balanced. I
Exactly.
think maybe a good way to say that. So, Conor, let's talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
You've had a great career, interesting career and background. So, can you share with our people here that are live, but also our listeners, a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you ended up at Heaven Hill?
I sure can. So, as the name suggests, Conor O'Driscoll, I'm Irish. I grew up in Dublin. I got my degree in chemical engineering over there and started work for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. They have a huge plant on the south coast of Ireland. About a year into that, they asked me to go to Terre Haute, Indiana, of all places. And it was a 3 to 6 month assignment. Well, we could go into the coincidences that reconnected me with some friends in Louisville. But I landed in Terre Haute not knowing where it was relative to anything, and had just got back in touch with some friends in Louisville and started coming to Louisville on the weekends. So when Pfizer, 4 months in, asked me to stay, I was honestly having so much fun. I said, I'm going to stick around so long as it's fun. And here we are. That was 1990, so we're almost 34 years later. I'm still having fun, and I'm still here. So I worked in Terre Haute for 6 years. Eventually quit my job there, rode my motorcycle across the country.
Wow.
Spent the summer doing that. 23 states, Mexico, Canada, 11,098 miles. As I was heading back to Indiana, and I was watching the miles tick around, and said, if I don't hit 11,000 miles, I'm going to ride around the block until I hit 11,000 miles. So,
How many times in Ironman training did you and I do that?
That's right.
Ride your bike.
Keep running. It's like, I got to hit 26 miles.
Exactly.
Run around the block.
I had a Harley V twin. I didn't have to pedal hard, so that was good.
Yeah, nice.
So then at the end of that, I ended up in Colorado, skied all winter, came back to Louisville for Derby, met my wife.
Oh.
Moved in with her, got married, worked as an engineer for an engineering firm for another 6 years. And I'd always say the plan B was, if it quit being fun here, it would be cool to go back to Dublin and try and get a job for Guinness, making Guinness.
Oh, yeah.
So once I ended up in Louisville, it was like, well, I started to drink bourbon, was really enjoying bourbon, and says, this seems like something I could enjoy. So that was in 2002, I started knocking on doors, and the bourbon industry, the bourbon life was very, very different back then.
Yeah.
Nobody was hiring. There were, 8 distilleries in Kentucky maybe, and 10 in the country.
Yeah.
So I knocked on doors for 2 years before I got a response, and then Brown-Forman hired me. And to put it in context, the previous person hired into that role was my boss, who'd been hired 26 years prior. That's how slow hiring was. So I worked for Brown-Forman in Louisville for 5 years, and then they sent me out to Woodford, and I commuted to Woodford every day for 9 more years, which was fantastic. I figured I drove 300,000 miles between Woodford
crazy.
and home. So, but what a time to be in the bourbon industry and part of a brand like Woodford. Things were really starting to pick up, like 2008, 2009, and they just haven't slowed since. Ultimately, I left there in 2017 and joined Angel's Envy for a hot minute. I'd been with them about 1.5 years, and Heaven Hill called and said, would you be interested in the Master Distiller role? A smart guy that I am, I said, no thanks. So I just made a big move. I liked working for Bacardi. There was a lot of good things going on. But as soon as I hung up, I was like, that was the wrong answer. And I went home and I told my wife, she goes, wrong answer. So luckily they called back, one thing, and then ultimately here I am. And honestly, probably the best career decision I've ever made is to joining Heaven Hill. That was 5 years ago, almost to the day.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's great. I mean, I love your background. I love your story.
It's fun. It's a fun story.
I always forget the Angel's Envy part of it.
Yeah, it was so short. But I
yeah.
mean, what a great facility, great team. Bacardi, really fun to work for.
Yeah.
Really good bunch of people.
And the thing about Woodford that I always forget, because Woodford started in '96, right? So it seems like Woodford Reserve has been around for 100 years.
Yeah.
And of course the distillery adds to that with the Old Pepper and LeBreau and Graham. Kind of gives that illusion of age. But yeah, I mean, it's a great place to be. I'm sure it's a lot of fun to work out there. So guys, let's jump back to the whiskey. Because we are at time frame. And I'm just going to tell everybody, Matt and I have been doing dry January. I don't know if you guys know what dry January is, right?
Hairs the back of my neck just stood up.
Yeah, I know. So today's the 20th. So I've been dry for 20 days. I was here yesterday, did not drink anything at all, which is probably one of the dumbest decisions to watch everybody else drink. But I stayed bone dry. But today I said, you know what? I've got Conor O'Driscoll. I'm drinking some great whiskey from Heaven Hill. So today I am actually drinking, but hopefully we'll go right back on and finish out the month.
You made it 20 days. That's good.
Yeah. So
cheers
I made
to that.
it 20, there you go.
Yeah,
So,
right.
Matt, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and the finish on the Heaven Hill 7-year-old bottled and bond?
It is just remarkable how different this is from the 6-year. And the 6-year product reminds me very much of some memories I had as a kid growing up and different foods that I ate. But this is just completely different. It's really sweet. I get like a nice cornbread note like a sweet corn cake or something right from there. There's a little bit of brown sugar, some toasted sugars in it as well, but a lot of the rich fruit, it's like stone fruits. I pick up like plum or fig, kind of.
You do have a good palate.
Good enough at convincing people, I guess. But nice, dark, good, sweet fruits on it, like good orchard fruit. Just really well-rounded. It's got a nice finish. It's not overly hot, but it doesn't leave you wanting more in terms of the finish. So I think it drinks really well.
And it's one of those bottles, you know, that I don't want to say I forget about it, but it's just one of those bottles. It's on the shelf, and you know, I kind of get caught up sometimes in, you know, what's the newest thing, or what's the biggest thing, or what's the unicorn to chase. And then you come back and you taste this, and it's like, man, I forget just how solid of a bourbon this is, because like you mentioned earlier, it's so well balanced. I mean, you touch on all these notes, like Matt said. You get that fruit, you get that cherry that still comes through on the palate to me. You get a little bit of oak. It's not over oaky. 100 proof. It's easy on the palate to drink, but you just get that bourbon overall effect and flavor, which is great. So what else do you pick up on?
So just to kind of echo what you said there, I mean, again, and I mentioned earlier, like this package, the wording on the label, and the whiskey just kind of speaks to Heaven Hill's legacy, who we are, and how we do business. You know, age-stated 7-year-old, 100 proof bottle and bond whiskey at a reasonable price point. Like I think it's like 40-something bucks. And available everywhere. There are all those make that basically a unicorn. A unicorn you can get every day. And then again, you get to the liquid, and it's just fantastic. You know, and it's so I mean, I'm not going to. What you two described, yes, all that is there. And really, what I like about it, again, it checks my first rule. I enjoy drinking it.
There you go. Right.
But as I was listening to you two, I was just thinking, everything is basically balance. And I love that. Like, we don't put cherries in the whiskey, and we don't. And obviously, we put lots of corn in there. But the fact that those, you know, the magic of fermentation, distillation, and maturation brings those forward, like whatever the organic chemistry going on there is just so cool. And then to have those just in concert with each other, and just a really delicious pour.
And the chemical engineer in you just kind of geeks out over that whole thing, right?
This just checks all my boxes.
No doubt, I get it. Well, we're kind of on a condensed schedule here today, so we probably need to wrap up around 1 here. Matt, final thoughts though on the 7-year-old bottled and bond?
Oh, it's great. I've actually not had too much of this product for as much as I've enjoyed the 6-year. And it's just remarkable what that extra year has done to it. What this product is and how it differs from the white labeled 6-year that we all came to know and love.
Yeah, I agree, Matt. It's completely different than 6-year-old. It's an exceptional bourbon, and now easier to find, which is great. And the price is right as well. You know, and it's available here for you that are here. You can pick it up over in the store. So Conor, great job on this one.
And to the team. I mean, I've been with the company 5 years. This is 7 years old. I didn't make it. But again, this is one of the cool things about a job like this, is like you pick up from where the previous fellas left off, and hopefully you leave a good legacy behind you. And it's an interesting way to look at things.
Great. Well, Conor, let's take a quick break. Let's get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with more with Conor O'Driscoll, the Master Distiller at Heaven Hill, in just a minute.
Bluegrass Distillers is a craft distillery with a passion for producing exceptional bourbon. They're committed to the art of distillation, using locally sourced grains to create a distinct and flavorful bourbon that captures the essence of Kentucky's rich whiskey heritage. Bluegrass Distillers takes pride in their small batch, hands-on approach, ensuring quality and attention to detail in every bottle they make, like their limited release 9-year-old Elkwood Reserve Bourbon, which is currently available for purchase at their brand new visitor center in Midway, Kentucky, their distillery in Lexington, and select stores throughout Kentucky. And with their new distillery slated to begin operation in spring of 2024, you'll be able to pick up even more exceptional spirits from them, like their wheated bourbon and their blue corn bourbon in the spring and fall. For more details and to plan your visit, check out their website at bluegrassdistillers.com. From our good friends at The Stave comes Lexington's newest hotspot to meet up with friends, have fun, and eat some great food. District 7 Social is a social and beer hall, but it's a lot more than that. Located in Lexington's Distillery District, it's the home of Lexington's first duck pin bowling lanes, and it also features a self-serve beer wall. That's right, self-serve. And if you want more, they've got it. You can try one of their delicious cocktails from the bar or order some great German fusion food from their on-site eatery, Germanish. So what are you waiting for? Be seen, be social. District 7 Social.
All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and we are live today at BourbonCon in front of a live audience with my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing down there, man?
Oh, Mark, I'm doing great. How about yourself? You doing well?
I'm staying warm and toasty in here when it's 8 degrees outside or 6 degrees or whatever it is. So, and I'm drinking bourbon, which makes me so happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's
at 11 in the morning.
Yeah, 11 in the morning.
Right?
It's been 20 days, but going to break it for this hour just so we can, experience some great whiskey with our guest. If you want to tell everybody who we have with us, that'd be great.
Our guest, Conor O'Driscoll, Master Distiller at Heaven Hill Distillery. Conor, welcome on back for the second round.
Good to be back. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for not leaving. We appreciate it.
We have 2 more whiskeys to taste.
It'd be kind of awkward.
It'd be rude to walk out.
You get up and walk out and leave us. That wouldn't be much fun. All right, so this round we've kind of switched gears here, moved on to something else. You want to tell everybody what we're going to be drinking on this round, Conor?
Well, this is so another bottle and bond. It's our Rittenhouse rye. I mentioned earlier that we make 5 styles of American whiskey, one of which is the H.H. Reg, another of which is rye whiskey. It's 51% rye, so just enough, just enough rye to be a rye whiskey.
Barely legal.
Barely legal, yeah. And then 14% malt. We put all our other regular styles have got 12% malt, but because rye is much harder to mash and break down and get the fermentation going, we add a little bit more malt, and then the remainder, 36% is corn. Okay. So 4-year-old bottle and bond again. This one though is interesting because Matt, it was a store pick you picked up, right?
Yeah, it is. So store pick from a place back in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I'm from.
So I mentioned that I've been with the company 5 years, so all our 4-year-old bottle and bonds were made, while I was there. Mm-hmm. But this one predates me by about 6 months. So I can't claim this one either. But
so again, bottled and bond has to be 100 proof. So this is 100 proof. It has to be at least 4 years old. So this one is right at the 4-year-old mark. Yeah. So it meets those requirements under the federal law to be called a bottled and bond. And Conor mentioned earlier that bottled and bond was really big for them and still is. And you guys got a great advocate out there, Bernie. If you guys don't know Bernie, you need to check him out. He is a great advocate.
He is awesome.
For Heaven Hill and for Bottled and Bond. He's got the big tattoo, Bottled and Bond as well. He's been a guest on our podcast as well. Just a great guy.
He is awesome.
A big advocate for Bottled and Bond and for Heaven Hill. So if you're not familiar with Bernie, you need to check him out. So
he does. He actually has a bluegrass band called the Bottle and Bond Boys.
That's right.
If you ever get a chance to see those, they're great. They play around Louisville a lot. He's played in Lexington a couple of times. But yeah, his description of bottle and bond is it's the green beret of whiskeys, because to call your whiskey bourbon, you got to do all these things, but then there's a whole additional layer of stuff you got to do to become a bottle and bond.
A good description.
So the green
Very
beret.
good description. Yeah, I like
so we were
that.
talking about unicorns earlier, and people say, "What have you got that's rare?" All of these are rare because they're bottle and bond. There's not that many bottle and bonds out there.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt, what do you pick up on the note? I mean, Matt's a rye guy, so this is his
I do love a
jam
good
here.
rye
So
whiskey.
what are you picking up on that, Matt?
It's a lot sweeter than I was expecting. There's a good amount of toasted sugars, brown sugars, like those kind of.
It's not as rye as I was expecting it to be, right? Especially for a barrel pick.
Yeah. Like good brulee sugar right up there. And then I get a nice rye grain. Like that rye grain is really coming forward. Like think of rye bread, kind of like that pastrami on rye kind of.
I was just thinking of a Reuben.
Yeah.
Rye,
it's got that
rye bread.
I'm getting hungry.
rye nose on it. Like some nice herbs coming through too. It's just like nice springtime herbs, like kind of thyme and like lemongrass in it as well. It's really nice, inviting nose.
Yeah, it's a brighter nose, obviously. It does have some similarities to bourbon because it does have 36% corn. So there's some corn in there, sweetness. It is sweeter than I expected, like Matt said. I think when I think of rye, I think more spiciness, and I expect to pick that up on the nose. But this one, it does have some spicy undertones to it, but a lot of that sweetness comes through initially like a brulee sugar. So again, very nice. Connor, what about you? What do you pick up?
So I said it's not as rye as I was expecting, because usually you get that, on the nose, front of mouth, spice notes, big mouth feel, where, like you guys said, it's a lot sweeter up front, but then the spices and the pepper show up late, which is, there's the rye. But Rittenhouse is one of my go-tos as well, and this is like a nice cousin of Rittenhouse because it's a barrel pick. It's a single barrel of Rittenhouse that somebody in this liquor store preferred. So yeah, good choice, whoever they were.
Yeah, well done, Matt. Yeah, Matt's a big rye fan.
Were you part of the pick? Or?
I wish I could hang my hat on this one. No, I was just in the right place at the right time.
Very nice. So Connor, let's jump back and talk a little bit about Heaven Hill itself.
Right.
So you've been there for 5 years.
5 years, yeah.
Can you talk about the brand? Because obviously it's been around a little bit longer than
88 years,
5
yeah.
years. Yeah. So talk about the history of Heaven Hill and kind of the things, that what's made Heaven Hill really as successful as it is.
All right. So we were founded in 1935 by the Shapira brothers, the 5 Shapira brothers. The Shapira family owned a chain of, they were called junior department stores through central Kentucky. And as Prohibition ended, distillers came back to Kentucky and were looking to raise capital to get their distilleries going again. So Earl Beam of the Beam family came to the Shapira family and said, "Can you, float us a loan to get our distillery going?" So they did, and it was either $12,000 or $20,000, which in 1935 is a lot of money, especially the end of as the Depression is winding down and all that. So, and I forget the exact sequence of events, but I think the short version is that Earl Beam was a better distiller than he was businessman. So ultimately, the Shapiras bought him out and got in the distilling business. Didn't have a brand, knew nothing about the business, but they made the decision right from the get-go that they were going to wait 4 years and bring out a bottle and bond.
Okay.
So the first product that Heaven Hill brought out was a bottle and bond whiskey, and again, that's been part of our legacy ever since. So the distillery was in Bardstown. We still have a lot of the companies still in Bardstown, but produced whiskey there until November 7, 1996.
Yeah.
The lightning struck one of our warehouses, immediately set it on fire. The fire spread to 6 additional warehouses, a total of 7 warehouses, 100,000 barrels. 2% of the world's bourbon went up in smoke. And also the burning river of whiskey flowed down the hill, basically in the front door of the distillery, and burned it to the ground. So, if you get the chance to Google distillery fire before you've typed that in, the pictures show up. And apocalyptic, catastrophic, all the big adjectives.
Yeah.
And realistically, should have put the company out of business. Yeah. But Max Shapira, who's the son of one of the founders, he just turned 80, so happy birthday, Max.
There you go.
Max. He was running the show at the time, got the team together and said, "We've cased the ship, we've orders to fill, everyone get back to work." So not only did nobody lose a job as a result of the fire, no one was injured, no one was killed, so kind of miraculous there. But, so it's cool how Max and the Shapira family responded that way, but then even cooler was how the industry responded. And they called around and said, "What can we do to help?" Now in 96, as another Max line, bourbon had almost gone to the great liquor store in the sky.
Yeah, right.
It was that was probably the very bottom of the decline of bourbon. So the industry had excess capacity. They had whiskey available, warehouse space, etc. So, can you imagine if the Pepsi plant burned down, would Coke call and say, "What can we do to help?" I don't think so. Yeah.
Nope.
But Brown-Forman, Beam, a bunch of the legacy distillers said, "What can we do to help?" So I mentioned earlier that I was hired by Brown-Forman in 2004. Yeah. But at that point, probably 60 to 70, maybe more % of what Brown-Forman was making was for Heaven Hill post-fire.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it used to really bother us that we thought, like, how come Max Shapira can sell all this whiskey and we can't? But realistically, Brown-Forman would not have had to hire me if it wasn't for the volume being produced for Heaven Hill. So there's a kind of nice synergy there. So thank you, Max, for hiring me by proxy in 2004 and again in 2019. So that's kind of the history up to 96. Then in 98, 99, we bought the Bernheim Distillery in downtown Louisville. That was owned by United Distillers. They were busy becoming Diageo and getting out of the American whiskey business. So we bought the Bernheim Distillery. We've added on to it multiple times, and it is currently the largest independently owned and operated bourbon distillery in the world.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy how large you guys are. And it's not that Heaven Hill flies under the radar, but it kind of flies under the radar.
It kind of flies under the radar,
It really, it's crazy because you guys, by volume and by production, like you said, that's the biggest.
You want some stats on
I would love some stats. You guys want to hear some stats? Let's hear some stats.
Everybody get excited for some stats.
Yeah, right.
So
from the chemical engineer.
Exactly. This is the engineer geek in me coming out now. So the world's largest bourbon distillery. So we have 17 fermenters. They're 124,000 gallons each. Every day we fill 4 of those, which means we have to distill out 4 of those. So 500,000 gallons of mash going in, 500,000 gallons of beer coming out. We distill that, make over 100,000 gallons of whiskey every day, enough to fill over 1,500 barrels a day.
Wow.
Every day we mill and mash over 1.1 million pounds of grain every day. That's about 22 to 25 truckloads. Add all that up, and in 2023, the year just ended, we produced over 29 million proof gallons, equivalent to over 440,000 barrels.
Wow.
So we set all the records. I really wanted to hit 450, but we decided we'd take a week off between Christmas and New Year's.
Now you're going to go out and run around the block and get the 450. Get the 450, right? That's
exactly.
really
so
impressive.
That was, I mean, and the like all the bits had to come. We spent a lot of capital dollars to improve and replace worn out stuff. We got a fantastic team at Bernheim. Like everybody there loves making whiskey, and they make great whiskey. And I get to do the fun stuff while they're at work. But I'm lucky to have a fantastic team there. And
so that's what maybe some people don't understand, and our listeners maybe don't know that. If you go to Heaven Hill in Bardstown, you're not going to see it actually. The distillery, there's not a distillery producing.
Not yet.
We're going to get to that in round 3, right? But you can tour. It's a beautiful place to go tour. It's a beautiful place to visit. The new restaurant. I've not been to the new.
So we just hired a chef, and the food service started to come up. But the Five Brothers Bar is up there, and Jen and her team do a great job.
It's gorgeous what's gone. We'll talk some more about the renovations and everything. But yeah, it's amazing. But the distilling actually takes place in Louisville, and then the rick houses and things, you've got them there on campus in Bardstown, but you got Deatsville as well.
Yeah, so we actually have 8 warehouse sites now. We have over 70 warehouses. We have 2-point-something million barrels aging.
Wow.
We're the second largest holder of aging bourbon and the largest holder of bourbon 7 years and older.
Wow. That's crazy.
So then we got plenty of whiskey to support the Heaven Hill.
And coming back, I mean, and you think about that. In '96, you lost 100,000. You lost 2% of the world's bourbon, 100,000 barrels, and now here you are at that point.
It's mind-boggling.
It's absolutely incredible. Let's jump back to the whiskey, Matt. What do you pick up palate and finish on the Rittenhouse rye?
I think it definitely makes its rye presence shown on the palate. There's good cracked pepper right up front. Some of the baking spices come through too, like a little bit of cinnamon, cardamom. I get dill. I'm picking up dill and kind of like a green apple or like a sour apple with it as well. And a nice, long, spicy finish. I think this one drinks really well for a rye whiskey. And again, bottled in bond, so it's not overly hot, overly spicy. I just think it packs a lot of good flavor and a lot of really great rye flavors in it as well. Yeah,
it's funny because you talk about the sweetness on the nose and everything, and then you take that sip, and yes, there is some sweetness to it, but that rye really does come through, and especially on the finish. It's just like lingers. There's that spiciness on your tongue. It just continues to go and go and go. I don't know if the Rittenhouse is available here on site or not. Of course, this is a store pick, so it was a one-off single barrel that was done, but Rittenhouse is easily available everywhere. And it's reasonably priced.
And bartenders love it. Like if you're in a lot of bars that have it in the rail, it's their go-to cocktail maker. Because 100 proof, rye forward. Obviously, it's rye whiskey.
Yeah.
It stands up in a Manhattan, in a paper plane, or whatever you want. It makes a really good cocktail.
That's what I was going to say, because this would be great as I started drinking it, like in an old fashioned, because I like the sweetness of an old fashioned, but I don't like it super sweet. Sometimes bourbon just adds to that sweetness.
Right.
Yeah.
But a rye like this just cuts right through with that spice on the palate. I think it'd be a great old fashioned if you're an old fashioned fan like I am. Definitely Rittenhouse rye would be a good additive to that. So, and it's one of those bottles where, it's not a $250 bottle that you're pouring into a cocktail. So you're not going to feel guilty about using Rittenhouse rye, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm using
No, this was $30.
Yeah,
I think the regular is 20 something.
I was going to say, it's in the mid-20s, right?
I
For a
add
regular.
$3 onto it for the single barrel.
Connor, what do you pick up in terms of the palate and finish on this one?
What surprised me as a barrel pick, obviously, it's unique. There's that's it, right? But all those apple notes, I was getting that sweetness. Like, what is that sweetness? And then when you said green apple, it's that kind of apple, sweet apple is there, which is really nice, which you don't usually get in Rittenhouse. But then all those, I like that spice notes. I love picking up that pepper note.
Yeah, definitely.
The finish has got that spicy tingle and then nice warmness, and just it's a lovely mouthfeel afterwards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, another hit. Matt, thanks for bringing this to share.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's a lot of fun. If you've not tried Rittenhouse, I would definitely suggest picking up a bottle again. You can find this pretty much anywhere, and it's just it's a great addition to have on your bar. I mean, it makes great cocktails, and it's nice to drink neat, which is sometimes rare when you find something that's going to be good to use in cocktails. Sometimes it's not so good to drink by itself, but this one, I mean,
does it all.
Easily stands up on its own.
We talked briefly earlier about how we make styles of whiskey, not brands, at Bernheim. So we make rye whiskey. It's the 51% rye. 4 years old, 100 proof, it's Rittenhouse. It's 6 years old, 110 proof, it's Pikesville. And at 8+ years old, 94 proof, it's Elijah Craig rye. A nice little vertical to do there, and just taste some proof-wise. So I'd start with the Elijah Craig, then the Rittenhouse, then the Pikesville, and you can see exactly how we turn styles of whiskey into brands. And we're we're very transparent about this. I told you the mash bill. I told you the three different brands have different price points, different packages, everything.
Yeah.
Starts out as the same distillate, going the same barrel, going in the same warehouses for different amounts of time, different batch size, different proofs, and we get three very different but related whiskeys, and all of which are spectacular.
As a fan of whiskey, bourbon, and ryes, I appreciate the transparency because there are some brands out there that you just don't get that from, right?
Yeah.
Should bring out a brand called Smoke and Mirrors.
Yeah, and you may experience that as consumers as well, that brands aren't necessarily as transparent as you'd like for them to be about what's in the bottle, how they're making things, what the mash bill is. So I appreciate that as a bourbon fan. You guys are definitely like that. Well, guys, we're at the end of round two since we're kind of shortening things up. So final thoughts, Matt, on the Rittenhouse rye.
Loving it.
You picked it, man. Of course you'd love it.
What can I say?
Well, whoever in the liquor store picked this barrel did a fine job.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So hats off to them.
Definitely. I'm a big fan. You can tell, dry January is suspended and my glass is empty. So big fan of that Rittenhouse rye.
January.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly right. All right, guys, let's take a quick break, get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Conor O'Driscoll, the Master Distiller at Heaven Hill, in just a minute.
The Stave Restaurant is a bourbon lover's paradise right here in the heart of bourbon country. Located at 5711 McCracken Pike in Millville, Kentucky, between Castle and Key and Woodford Reserve, Chef Kyle Klatka prepares amazing food each day that features an elevated Kentucky-inspired cuisine. With a full-service bar, great bourbon flights, and signature cocktails, the Stave is the perfect place to catch up with friends after a fun-filled day of touring the local distilleries. Be sure to check them out online at thestavekentucky.com or at Instagram and Facebook at The Stave Kentucky. Three Chord's line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they call Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and with me here live at BourbonCon at the Marriott Griffin Gate in Lexington today, it's my good friend, Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Mark, I'm great.
Yeah.
Great down here. We're around a different table, but good to have some guests rolling in, live audience here.
Yeah,
great
live
to be at
audience,
BourbonCon
man.
here at Griffin Gate.
Great whiskey, great event.
Great whiskey, yeah.
Having a lot of fun. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support. We appreciate all of our sponsors. We couldn't do the show without them, so we definitely appreciate all that they do for us. With that said, Matt, you want to tell everybody who we have with us today?
Absolutely. Back for our third and final round is Conor O'Driscoll, Master Distiller at Heaven Hill. Conor, welcome on back.
Good to be back, guys. Thanks.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having so much good whiskey, too.
Yeah. And speaking of, Mark, let's roll right into the third round with
we
one
got a
of
big gun.
Yeah, that's right, the big gun. Conor, tell
one
everybody
of
what we're
Mark's
drinking
favorites
here.
here.
All right, so this is the most recent edition, the C923 release of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. You know, we bring this out 3 times a year. It used to always be 12 years old, exactly. Our age stated at 12 years old. We're now putting the actual age on it. This one is a big, beefy 13 years and 7 months old.
Oh, yeah.
133 proof. And in case you don't believe me, it's won a bunch of awards as best bourbon of 2023.
It has.
When we were pouring up our glasses here earlier, I poured it. I was like, Christ, look at the color on that.
Yeah, if you guys can see that out there, right?
Yeah.
How
I mean,
dark
this is dark mahogany brown. I mean, it's lovely.
Motor oil in there.
And I will tell you guys, just so you know, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is my favorite bourbon. And I'm not just saying that because Conor's here, but I've got a video on my social media that shows that I did back in February. My wife will attest to this. At that time, I had about 55 different bottles of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, and now that's up to probably closer to 70 or more. Just because I buy them and then I buy extras, just because I want to have those once I finish it. So batch after batch, consistently, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is my favorite. When people say, "What's your favorite bourbon?" Some people are hesitant to say. They're like, "Oh, it depends on the situation. It depends on who I'm with." I'm like,
Not Mark, nope.
That's BS. No.
Yeah.
Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is my favorite, hands down. And when this C923 came out, because with the 523, which was released in May, that was the first one that the age statement of 12 years was dropped off, right?
Yeah.
So people were panicked. Everybody's like, "Oh no, they're going to start doing 8-year-old and 9-year-old." Everybody's kind of freaking out in the world out here on bourbon. The bourbon fans that loved it. And then they roll out 923, that's 13 years and 7 months old, and it's 133 proof. So
It's a beefy whiskey.
It definitely is. There's no question about it. But this is my favorite bourbon.
It's
Matt,
so good.
I'll throw it to you. What are you picking up? Have you guys noticed how I do that all the time? I always,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Matt's got the super palate, and
I
I'm
don't
just
know
like,
about that.
Matt, what do you pick up on the nose on that?
I think, Conor, that's a good way to describe it, as a beefy whiskey. It's got a nice, bold nose to it, but I'm certainly not picking up the 133 proof on the nose. It's not burning or anything, but you can tell that it's definitely got some strength behind it. It's good cherry, definitely some great influence from the barrel. It's like really strong oak, but not that overly tannic oak, certainly not like a chest, like an oak chest, like you're smelling just way too much oak. It's got a good balance with it, but a lot of those good older aromas on it too, kind of some tobacco, some
Right, I get a
leather.
lot of tobacco.
Yeah. And that sounds weird. I don't know if you guys if you drink older whiskeys or if you have familiarity with it, you know, a lot of times you can get like leather or tobacco, things like that, which sounds weird to describe for a whiskey, but some of my favorite notes are, you know, leather and tobacco. And this one at 13 years, 7 months, definitely starts showing some of those. Matt, I agree. The sweetness on this.
Yeah, there is sweetness, like cherry pie.
It's crazy how, I mean, 133 proof. I can't, it's crazy. Conor, what about you? What do you pick up on the nose?
Gosh, a little bit of everything. You know, I think I like the older ones, the bigger proofs like this. I like talking about kind of what's not there as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of big age-stated whiskeys out there that have got a big price point on them that people chase after that are, to me, they taste kind of like a dirty old stick. They've got way too much wood in them.
Yeah.
They've been in the barrel too long, and, you know, this is not that. I think those stone fruits are there, huge cherries, plums, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, there is some sort of sweetness in there. It's not honey, it's nothing cloying. It's maybe a brown sugar type maple syrup end of the spectrum. Balanced again. We've talked about all these whiskeys, how balanced they are.
Yeah.
Now, this one, you're drinking a big whiskey.
Yeah.
It's not shy in your mouth at all.
And the crazy thing is, again, it's the same mash bill. These two bourbons, the 7-year-old bottled and bond,
Right.
Same mash bill as that Elijah Craig barrel proof, the 78, 10 rye and 12 malted barley, right?
Right.
Now, I don't know where this one was. Barrels, this is a batch, right? So they're different barrels. People kind of go crazy over Dietsville, though. If you guys are Heaven Hill fans, if you're into single barrels.
I think this was a Dietsville, was it not?
I don't know if it was or not. Did it say?
Rickhouse MM? Would that have been?
The double M's are, I think, Shenley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or the double M's, I think, are Shenley,
well, you tell people about Dietsville.
All right, so
right?
Dietsville, so we have 70-something warehouses on 8 sites, and I don't know the number exactly because we're adding a new one about every 6 months.
Yeah.
I said earlier we have
when you make 100,000 barrels, right, you got to do that.
We had 1,500 barrels a day, 440,000 last year. You need them.
Growing pains.
But Dietsville is a very unique site. I think there are 6 houses there, and they're in a row. They're just off 245. If you're driving down 245, you can see them on the north side there, and they're stepped up like almost like a church.
Yeah.
And there's very unique aging happens in there because of the higher it is, the higher you go in a house, the hotter it gets because heat rises, and those ones, they get narrower as they get up, so it's really concentrated up there. So you get unique aging properties out of that. But the reason people gravitate towards Dietsville is Parker Beam, who was Heaven Hill's Master Distiller Emeritus. I'm the 7th, he was the 4th. He was Master Distiller for 46 years. I got a ways to go. I think I'll be 129.
There you go.
But he said in an interview one time that Dietsville was his favorite. So when we do barrel picks, we'd have 3 barrels there, and I'd say 9 times out of 10, the first question is, any of these from Dietsville? And we don't tell you because we tell you what the oldest one is, where it came from, what the proof is. People want the oldest one. They want the Dietsville. Right. And then I've been in a ton of these things where, they pick the one that's not from Dietsville, or they pick the one that's not the oldest or not the highest proof, and they're disappointed. Like, come on, you just said that was your favorite.
Yeah, right. You just have to sit here and pick your favorite whiskey. And you're disappointed.
Now, Dietsville, all our houses, all our sites make great whiskey.
Sure.
And one I'm really proud of is the 7 houses we have in Louisville at the Bernheim Distillery. These are big brick and concrete buildings. 4 of them are 12 stories tall. We have several that are 10 stories tall, and 1 or 2 that are 8 stories tall. And they were built 100 years ago, and they make great whiskey. So the next edition of the Heaven Hill Heritage Collection, which is it's bourbon focused, always big age statements on it. It's an 18-year-old that came out of Warehouse I in Bernheim, and you will not believe how soft and subtle and just like low key this whiskey is for an 18-year-old. Wow. So so these are the levers we pull to turn styles of whiskey into brands. But
very nice.
Dietsville's got cachet.
It does. Yeah. It's crazy. So let's talk about everything that's going on, because it's been 3 years since you've been on.
Yeah.
But obviously Heaven Hill has been extremely busy in those 3 years. Can you tell our audience here and our listeners as well what all has been going on and what the future's looking like?
So probably 3 years ago was when we first started talking about how much whiskey can Bernheim realistically make, and is it enough? So again, I talked earlier, we made 440,000 barrels in 23. That is basically running 100% capacity 100% of the time. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's not enough. So as we look at how our brands are growing and what our plans for expansion are, we realize we need more capacity. So we are halfway through building a new distillery in Bardstown, about 3 miles from the site of the one that burned down. We poured the first concrete there a little over a year ago, and we are about a year from starting up. We will be starting up by the end of this year, and it is a spectacular project. If you're driving through Bardstown, you take 245. If you're kind of going 245 through Bardstown around towards Lux Row, it's on the right, right before you get to Old Bloomfield Pike, and it's big. The scale is amazing, but to be involved in that project from the get-go, to be part of the design, to work with a team that's, designing it, constructing it, commissioning it is just fantastic. It's so exciting.
Well, I was thrilled. I got to go to the groundbreaking. We actually when was that? 2 years ago? Was that in 22?
That was July a year ago, so 18 months ago.
Yeah. So I got to go to that. So I was just super excited to see all that's
you
going
should
on.
see what's going on now.
Yeah. We need
from a cornfield to a half-built distillery in 18 months. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
So you got that going on. Of course, the expansion at the distillery, you talked about that, all the different things there in Bardstown. The beautiful, I love the rick house where we did the barrel pick with the glass wall and everything. I mean, everything is really, really cool. Can you talk about some of the things, the changes, and the experiences now that are going on there that people can come check out?
Sure. So we've got the Heaven Hill Bourbon Experience in Bardstown. Right as COVID was ending was when we opened that. So we had this kind of socially distant mask. So we wear masks, or we still wear masks, but we spent, I think, $21 million to expand that. And we see, I think we're over 100,000 visitors there a year. And Jeff Crow and his team there do a fantastic job. And you can do different tastings, different tours. There's several different barrel picks you can do, like you do bourbon.
Yeah.
And part of that is you get to, there's 4 different expressions there. 3 are there's a wheated bourbon, an HH reg, and a rye whiskey usually, and then a 4th something else, like the rotating tap. You get to fill that and label it. And the crew down there are great. We got a bar upstairs called Five Brothers, after the 5 Shapira brothers who founded the company. And as we mentioned earlier, we're about to start food service there too.
Yeah.
And then when the new distillery is called Heaven Hill Springs. The original Heaven Hill Distillery in Bardstown was called Old Heaven Hill Springs. This is not new Heaven Hill Springs, but it is the new, Heaven Hill Springs Distillery.
Punctuation makes all the difference.
Exactly.
That's right.
There will be a visitor experience there. And so we designed this to be a distillery to make whiskey that visitors can come to.
Yeah.
Because you see so much the other way around. We're going to make a visitor experience. Oh yeah, we make whiskey here. Or we showcase something. So this is a production facility. It'll make another 150,000 barrels, phase 1. Excuse me. We've laid it out to allow 2 more phases of 150,000 barrels. So get this, if we build all 3 phases of Springs and we run Bernheim flat out, we can make over 900,000 barrels a year.
Yeah.
And I've already been asked 15 times, could you make $1 million?
Could you make $1 million?
Oh, probably.
Man, that's going to be exciting.
You all got to keep drinking it, all right?
That's right.
Yeah. There's your homework.
But you'll get on a bus at the Heaven Hill Bourbon Experience, take it to Springs Distillery, do the tour there. It's going to be amazing, and then go back to Springs. And of course, in Louisville, we've got the Evan Williams Bourbon Experience.
Right.
So the joke for the last few years is like Max Shapira has told me to make all the whiskey you can and then a little bit more. But we make all the whiskey we can, 1,500 barrels a day, and then Jody and the team at the Evan Williams Bourbon Experience, they make a little bit more. They make 1 barrel a day.
Right, they make 1 barrel there in Louisville, right? But that's something that a lot of people don't know. I mean, Heaven Hill has so many different brands. I mean, how many do you know? I mean, is there a number?
It's over 100 different whiskey brands.
I mean, that's crazy, right? I mean, to think about how many different things you guys produce. Yeah, it really is. And you've got great products. We haven't talked about the palate and the finish, though, on this one, right? So we probably need to... Probably need to talk about that before we close it up today. So Matt, what do you pick up? Throwing it back to you, Matt. What a surprise, right?
I'll take it. It's got really good, I pick up a lot of red wine characteristics on it. I think like dark, bold red wine notes. It's, to me, almost has like a cranberry or like black currant kind of note to it. So it's like a little prickly on the palate. I think some of the heat comes across that way, some of the proof points in there. Definitely influence from the oak. Yeah. You can tell this is an older whiskey. There's some pie crust, I think, comes through, some sweetness in there. But then nice, like sweet tobacco on the finish with it. Just drinks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And still at 133 proof.
Certainly doesn't drink 133
proof. I'm surprised at how it does not drink at what other 133 proof whiskeys drink at. Conor, what about you? What do you pick up on the palate and finish?
I love that you said red wine. I mean, it almost tastes like a big dry cab.
Yeah.
You know, and it almost has that mouthfeel.
Yeah.
But whatever the big adjectives you want to throw at this, they'll all hang with it. I mean, it's lots of red fruit, spice on the finish. Yeah, a little bit of heat, but it's 133 proof. It's 13 years old. You would expect that. Yeah. But again,
I love the way it clings in the glass. It's like every time I take a drink, it's crazy how clingy, how oily that is, and you feel that in your mouth because it definitely coats everything, coats your palate.
And the finish just keeps going.
It does.
Going and going.
And this one, like you said, I mean, people have named it their favorite, their best whiskey. This was one of my best whiskeys of 2023. No question about it. And again, I'm partial to Elijah Craig Barrel Proof just because it is my favorite whiskey. But this particular batch,
I think this is a great whiskey that you could pick without knowing what it was. It just drinks really well, and knowing that it is Elijah Craig, 13 years, 7 months, and it's able to be found at an approachable price point.
And we're selling this for $70.
$70, which is crazy. So I think I have 4 bottles of this one. Nice. I always, anytime I can find one, I pick it up.
That's why they got to boost production. To keep
That's
your,
right.
keep your basement full.
Make those million barrels because I'm gonna.
That's
I need
right.
to buy
Wouldn't
a
that
few.
be cool to make 1 million barrels in a year?
I can't imagine. That would be awesome. So, what other things coming up? Because we're almost out of time here, but coming up for Heaven Hill.
Well, I teased the Heaven Hill
things.
Heritage Collection.
Yeah. Okay.
So this will be the third official release in that. We had it was age stated at 17, but it averaged out about 19 years old. It was the first one. Then we had the 20-year-old corn last year, which is kind of cool to do with that. That was a really fun expression.
Yeah.
And this one is back to HH Reg, and it's 18 years old, bottled at 120 proof. And I tasted it at 135, and literally called the lab and was like, have you watered this down? Because it doesn't taste 135. And it's soft and it's subtle.
Wow. And
it came out of the Bernheim warehouse, like I mentioned, which is, they're great at those like super aged whiskeys. So that's exciting. This summer, we'll be bringing out our grain to glass expression. This is a project we've been working on for 6 or 7 years. And we work with local farmers, local seed companies to pick grains that grow well in Kentucky. We've actually been able to partner with farmers to bring rye back as a cash crop.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
And it's some work that the bourbon industry is doing. I know it started when I was at Woodford. Elizabeth McCall is doing a lot of work there too. But we called our friends at Brooks Grain and a couple of years ago and said, Kentucky rye? And they said, well, as a matter of fact, we do. We said, we'll buy it all. So for the last several years, we've bought it all.
Nice.
We've got a high rye bourbon, a high wheat bourbon, and a high rye, or as to say around here, a high rye.
High rye.
All right.
So they'll come out this year.
Okay.
And then there will be those 3 expressions that will be readily available kind of every day.
Oh, good.
And then for the first 2 years, we didn't do this, but subsequently, half of each distillate has gone in a special barrel. So we've got a French oak, a Slovakian oak. We've got different toasts, different chars, and those will be kind of premium expressions of the grain to glass. So the first edition will come out this summer. We got something cool with Old Fitz coming up. We were tasting different William Heaven Hill potentials.
Oh, yeah. That 15-year-old.
We got some cool stuff.
Well, I'm sorry that we're at the end.
Me too.
We can keep talking for like an hour. I mean, this is crazy, right? So any final thoughts you want to share before we wrap it up today, Conor?
Appreciate you guys having me back. Can't believe it's been 3 years since the last time.
Crazy. Sorry about that.
No, it's time flies and you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you to the audience for coming out. It's great to see you all early on a Saturday, cold Saturday morning, drinking a little whiskey. Just keep buying our whiskeys. As evidence today, there's no need to spend over $100 on a bottle of whiskey. If you want to, knock yourself out. But the most expensive thing we're drinking here today is $70. It's 13 years and 7 months old.
And it's so delicious.
Matt, and 2 of the 3 are readily available everywhere.
Right.
So.
Matt, final thoughts before we get out of here?
I think, Conor, like you said, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. If you're enjoying the whiskey, you're doing it right. So I think those are wise words to go by. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again, Conor.
Thoroughly enjoyed
we
it.
appreciate
Thank you,
it, man. It's been great.
Yeah.
I love running into you randomly, at different places, getting to say hello. It's I'm glad we got you back. I'm sorry it was 3 years. We won't do that again, I promise.
I'll come back whenever you'll have me.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that.
We'll
Thank
come out
you
to
all,
see you
our
next
live
week.
audience, for showing up this morning
thanks
on
all.
a cold cold morning to be here to join us and listen to what Conor had to share about Heaven Hill. We appreciate you guys being here. We are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn, so we appreciate their support. We appreciate all of our sponsors. Of course, we couldn't do the show without all their help. We appreciate you, our listeners out there, you guys as well, audience showing up to support us this morning. We appreciate that. You can always find us on your favorite podcasting platform, whatever that may be. We're everywhere out there. You can also find us on Instagram and on Facebook as The Bourbon Life. You can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. If you have any questions about anything, we'd love to hear from you. With that said, I want to wrap it up. Send us on with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full. May you keep on living the Bourbon Life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the Bourbon Life.